LA Nightlife is undefeated. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Optimism Monday, the day after the Nuggets hand the Lakers their first loss of the season. This is Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by my colleague and friend Adam Mares. You can find him on Twitter at Adam_Mares and find his work at DNVR. Thanks for making this your first listen. We appreciate you joining us on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join folks like CJ Morgan, who's already in here talking about Jokic not having fun. Miroslav's hanging out with us today. Calvin, Topster RCM, saying we'd be all right. Yep, that sounds about right. Derek D, who says Lego. Lots of folks in here on a Monday. Glad to have you with us as we recap the Denver Nuggets, who handed the Los Angeles Lakers their first win of the season. Yes, it's true. The Nuggets were beaten by the Lakers on Sunday night, 121-110. Lot to get to about this loss. I have a lot of thoughts, Adam. Would you like to start?
Oh, wow.
I have a lot. I have feces on this game.
Okay. I'm 3/4 of the way through the rewatch. I did go all the way through that end of third quarter meltdown, which obviously decided the game, the 13-0 run to close. So I have a majority of it. Don't have the fourth quarter rewatch just yet. But so I have some thoughts too, but I'm curious. I think you should lead it. I want to hear yours.
Okay. So was this a bad loss? Yes, categorically it was a bad loss. The Lakers were winless. The Lakers are helpless offensively, and you let them get going, and then they started to hit shots, and even bad teams will hit shots on some nights. And the inflexibility of what was a sound game plan, I thought when I rewatched the defensive section of the game, a sound game plan was undone by poor technique, poor effort. That got momentum going, and at that point, you probably have to change up what you're doing. They did not. Injuries played a role, but don't define everything. Some of the stuff in here are continuing issues. Some of the things I think will probably be better, not only as the season goes along, but almost immediately. There are certain lineup combinations. Most notably to me, I do not know that Bruce Brown and Jeff Green can coexist except in very, very specific combinations. Very specific combinations. And the numbers have started to kind of back that up as I dug into those last night. But my main takeaway, Adam, is that effort by the starters, I thought, led to momentum, which the Lakers turned using staggered lineups to their advantage versus a bench that was overmatched. So I don't think the starters played well. They still won their minutes, and I think that's fascinating.
I don't know if it's quite as fascinating to me. Your point is right, though, that I think that the Nuggets, their defensive intensity just hasn't been there, in particular with that starting group. And that includes Aaron Gordon, who's sort of out there to be a defensive player. But so I have starters winning it, and the bench, some of those guys having minus 28, 26, 20 or whatever. That was the game. And that third quarter run was the game. But you are right that weren't the solution when it mattered most. In large part because of, I think, their defensive attention to detail and intensity and just will. And I think that's a bit of a concerning thing for a team that has championship aspirations.
Yeah, so this is an interesting. We kind of have had another game like this. I forget which one, but this kind of reminds me of the other one where it's look, I don't think the starters played well, but they won their minutes, and the bench got annihilated. So it's the bench is why they lost. The starters probably could have shaped this game differently, and I don't know if that's fair or not. I can't watch Joker right now and think that he is playing well relative to his standards. Anthony Davis really took it to him last night. And third quarter, some of that was just Davis started hitting jumpers, right? Anthony Davis is going to hit jumpers.
First quarter, too. Anthony Davis was hitting his mid-range.
Yeah, and if Anthony Davis is hitting his jumpers, there's not a lot you can do. Like
Yeah.
he is a huge person, and usually he doesn't shoot well. And if he hits those, that's a problem. But getting beat on the offensive glass, like Joker really got out hustled last night on the offensive glass, and that's like a real problem. If we talk about the bench, the 5-man the 5-man bench unit makes an appearance one game after he says he needs to not. Malone says he needs to never be on the floor without a starter. I will say, like, even some of the combinations, when I went look back and look at the lineup data, even some of the combinations when it was Jamal and Porter and some of the bench, when it was Joker and some of the bench, like those combos weren't good either. And so
Yeah, but the game, good versus not good or whatever. You get outscored by 4 points in 5 minutes, 6 points, whatever. The 13-0 run, and like that to me, and that run was a 5 bench person lineup. So,
but when you watch that, what did you see? Because I saw that was when they started, like, Lonnie Walker goes absolutely supernova. He got
real hot.
Well, like, okay.
No,
I don't know what to do.
Here's where you're wrong. Because this is my number one takeaway from the end of the third quarter. It wasn't bad defense. It was atrocious offense that led to some transition things. So I actually, the thing that surprised me on rewatch was I actually thought this was an offensive problem, and specifically an offense decision-making problem. And some of this is tough because Bruce Brown is a good secondary ball handler, but I think as a point guard, like, you're asking a lot there, especially on a lineup that doesn't necessarily make sense. You're asking a guy to like solve a very difficult equation when he's not that guy. He took a shot with 30 seconds left on the clock, thinking he was going for a 2-for-1. This is just an example, thinking he was going for a 2-for-1, but it actually, there was only a 3-second differential, there, which is not a good 2-for-1. If you get the ball back with 3 seconds left on the clock, that's not really a full second possession, right? You basically have 3 seconds to sprint the ball up and jack a terrible shot up. So that was a bad decision. Jeff Green had 2 very quick offensive possessions. One he airballed was a turnaround jumper from about 17 feet on the baseline that he probably hits 20% of the time. I think Anthony Davis was guarding him too. So you have a good defender challenging a baseline jumper. Both of those with 14-ish seconds on the clock. Nothing has happened. So to me, that was what I go back and look at. And that's why some of this I give Malone a pass. He didn't have Ish Smith. He didn't have Bones Highland. It's hard. Like, you didn't go into the game planning for those things either. So it wasn't like he had a day to say, okay, what do I need to avoid? You're just kind of in a pinch. That being said, that lineup went out there and just made so many horrible offensive decisions. And yes, Lonnie Walker made a tough shot. Matt Ryan made a tough shot. But you allow those guys momentum when you're letting them play in transition every single possession.
Second quarter in their bad stretch, like, Ish had like a lob to DeAndre that just like he just missed. Ish was bad last night, and to me, I part of me was kind of like, really, this guy hasn't played. Well, this guy hasn't played against non-garbage time all season, and like, he was bad. I'll objectively say he was bad. It was a bad, like, the Lakers are not a team I would want Ish to play against, like, for a lot of reasons in terms of the physicality. But I also think like some of that was like rust, and they probably could have been better if he gotten a little bit more minutes. I don't disagree, because like there was a possession in that stretch in the third quarter where like literally like Jeff Green is like trying to run a DHO and like nobody's doing anything. Like nobody knows what to do. Like it's like that entire second unit doesn't have. You talked about the identity. Like they don't even have like a plan offensively, especially without Bones. Like they just do not have a plan. And that's a problem. Like that's.
But I hope this contextualizes a little bit of Bones' struggles, because I know some people have been frustrated with Bones. Oh, he's being a chucker, this or that. Like that unit really struggles. And by the way, the third part of this, so Ish is out, Bones is out, but then Michael Porter's in foul trouble, because typically that's the guy you would give him. I mean, Jamal Murray played 32 minutes last night. That's already a lot for where he's at right now in his recovery. So usually you would want to put Michael Porter there. You're not going to put Jokic there. He needs to get a rest so he can close the game. And because he was in foul trouble, Malone elected not to risk him getting a fifth foul, which maybe I think you could argue was a mistake. Like, you're desperate at that point. Just don't worry about foul trouble. Just say, hey, if he fouls out, he fouls out. Nonetheless, I understand most 9 out of 10 coaches are going to bench their guy with 4 fouls for whatever reason, even if it costs you a 13-0 run. I think that's backward logic, but it's traditional thinking. Michael Malone's very traditional.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk more about the bench. We'll talk about some of the problems. I want Adam's thoughts on where Joker's at, and we'll talk a little bit more about Malone decision making that was made, as well as try to put this loss into perspective. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Programming note: if you're listening to this and if there's any sort of audio issues because we're having video issues, we continue to have to use this platform, but we'll be off of this platform in less than a month, and probably things will be better by then. So I would ask you just hang with us. We do the best we can. Right now, our connection is 4 bars on both of us, so it should be fine. There's really, literally nothing else that we can do besides where we're at.
The hard thing is that it doesn't lag to me or you, so it looks like we're fine.
Yeah. Want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for betting football on the start of the new basketball season. I had a horrendous day because I bet against those Denver Broncos. Let's ride. I bet on the Jaguars twice, and once straight up and once in a parlay. Lost both of those. Bad day for me. So sad. Matt's terrible. Faded the Broncos. Boo. 5-star reviews, please. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check out all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday, getting your week started off with us. Appreciate making us your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and beyond the sign, behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Second segment. So we're talking about the bench and all the problems with the bench. It was funny just because I have a lot more notes in terms of the starters. I have a lot more notes because the bench stuff is just pretty obvious to me, and it's not. But you're absolutely right. The 18-3 run, that's it. That's the ball game. You're absolutely right on that. So it's if I'm trying to diagnose the game qualitatively, I have a lot more notes on the starters. If I'm trying to diagnose it quantitatively in terms of why did they lose, it was the bench. To me, the interesting thing here is that the Nuggets starters didn't play. I thought they played really badly as a group. Kentavious was pretty clearly still coming back from the ankle. And again, I thought Joker was not horrible, just real. He's always so far ahead of the defense. In this game, I felt he was behind the defense on some plays, and on defense, it was kind of worse for him.
Defense, offense. I mean, he missed a couple bunnies, but I didn't. I think the thing than a Joker thing. But the defense is just. We're 7 games into the season, and his defense is, I think, the worst we've seen in I don't know how long, 4 years.
I think offensively, more of what I'm talking about is even on stuff off of the cut and off of the catch, it doesn't feel like he's moving with intensity or purpose, right? It feels like he looks tired and just kind of not going through the motions, but something akin to that, if that makes sense. Defensively, I agree with you. It's been bad. Again, when he's getting killed on the offensive glass, when the Nuggets have been the best defensive rebounding team in the league over the last 2 seasons, I think that's probably indicative of something, even if Davis is a tough cover. The Patrick Beverley score under the basket on the loose ball, that's just that's a wild sequence that Patrick Beverley finishes through him, right? That's just, that stuff to me is purely an effort where, and I will say, I've kind of wondered if he was ill for a number of reasons. I thought that was maybe something they were kind of snaking by, but
or something. He's playing a guy that has coming off of a flu or something where you're tired. His defensive intensity is that of a guy who is sick.
Yeah. I noticed something interesting. So I've talked a lot about the scheme, right? They actually played at the level. They in pick and roll stuff. They actually played at the level and it worked. The problem was that they are this to me is a huge problem. They are overhelping to an insane degree. The Timberwolves have actually literally adjusted that's a big focus for them, is not overhelping to allow fewer threes. And it's having a lot of success. Denver desperately needs to do that. And Bruce Brown was a terrible offender last night. He was really bad in terms of of how much he was overhelping. AG, I thought, was actually a little bit slow on some of his rotations on interior stuff. He was the opposite.
Brown, he was also really bad containing on drives. He got blown by a lot, and it was kind of surprising. What do you make? By the way, I don't know if you've seen the plus minus stuff. I know this doesn't tell everything, especially in a 7-game sample size.
The
Bruce Brown,
the
major
Bruce Brown.
outlier right now in the negative.
Yeah. So you said that last night on DMVR. So I started looking into some of the numbers. Him and Joker have lost their minutes together, which is obviously like that is it's a bad. It's like oh that's not good. That I really do chalk up to variance. The one that I kind of hinted at earlier is the Jeff Green and him numbers are god awful. Like lineups without him and Jeff Green are pretty good. Like with Bruce Brown, without Jeff Green, pretty good. So, like, I don't know how to solve this because Jeff's so firmly in the rotation. But there's something about that combination of players. To me, it's almost like Jeff's not necessarily a connector at this point in his career, but he's like he fills in a lot of gaps. And the problem is like on that bench unit, he winds up having to play like a bigger role than he needs to. Like Jeff Green just doesn't need to, he needs to be like a very low usage, just kind of out there guy at this point in his career. And he's doing a lot because he's one of the only guys that can. And I think that causes a lot of problems. Like to me, I have circled like the Bruce Brown, Jeff Green combination as for whatever reason, it doesn't work. Now it may work later, right? It can work later. It may not be a conceptual problem. Maybe it's just like variance. But when I look at
it's so early in the season, I'm inclined to, unless I have a thing that I'm looking at and I'm like, oh, teams are constantly doing this. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm just saying I don't have that yet. So I'm going to chalk this up to 7-game sample size, 3 of which Denver has kind of been blown out. Like this is the thing. Denver has a terrible net rating as a team right now, despite being 4-3. It's because they've eked out wins and gotten blown out. So I think that's going to stretch the data, but I would just say this. It's worth watching. It's worth keeping an eye on. That's interesting about the 2-man pairing. It's like, okay, let's take a look. Let's take a closer look here in the coming games.
I thought last night really was a cacophony of things, right? Where, again, I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't a bad loss because I think it was. Okay, this is a winnable game that they lost. This team was winless. You could have won this game. The Lakers win on Sunday more often than any other day of the week, and they win at a higher rate on Sundays than almost any team in the league. Like, I've looked up the numbers on this. This isn't just like anecdotal stuff. Like, the numbers actually bear this out. The Nuggets had an off night in Los Angeles. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is just like, they're not the first team to fall victim to LA nightlife in terms of the spot being bad. Like in gambling, we talk about this all the time. What's the spot? A Sunday game in LA with a night off in LA is always a recipe for trouble. Lakers obviously desperate. Mike Prada said this on Twitter that even the worst shooting teams are going to have nights where they shoot well. They shot well last night. I think the Nuggets helped them into getting into rhythm. But
it almost balanced out, though. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it didn't balance out. They did shoot well from 3, but LeBron missed every layup in the first half. Like I've never seen him miss that many layups.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Part of me wonders if the variance thing evened out with LeBron being bad. Maybe not quite evened out. To me, it just came down to that one run. It was a stretch. Like when you lose by 10 points and you have a 13-0 run in a minute 30, it's like we could just cut out 1 minute 30 and say this was an even game. I know it doesn't exactly line up like that, but to me, it lines up close enough that I can say, yeah, that was a tough stretch.
Yeah, and like I agree that MPJ should have put MPJ back in, and like here's the thing. What's the worst case scenario if MPJ fouls out?
He fouls out.
No, I have to play Bruce Brown with the starters.
And I just think there's something to this is like there's a lot of ways in which coaches have like gone with the times, but one way where I feel like majority of coaches still for whatever reason do things the old school way is that, oh no, it would be terrible if foul trouble led him to not playing. So let's take him out of the game to ensure it. It's so counterintuitive. I do think there's something to if he fouls out with 5 minutes to go in the game, at least your team knows this is who we have now.
Is there a coach that consistently doesn't do that?
I don't know.
Like Nurse will put him on the bench.
Almost all of them will. It's just here's what's especially funny. The Lakers team has 2 guys. You know, they've got a bunch of role players. I know some of them got hot last night or whatever. But when you see a group that's going to close with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and you're like, hey, let's save our foul trouble because like it's like, no, they're throwing their haymaker and you're saving a guy for later. Like, no, you got to be out there. And then, but also there's this other part, which is that second unit hasn't developed an identity through training camp and through here. So even though they shouldn't be playing it at all, when you go to that and you take quick, Bruce Brown, quick pull up 3 in transition, when you hit Jeff Green, ISO with 14 seconds on the clock, that unit is bad, but they're also directed in a really horrible direction, in my opinion.
Before we go to break,
maybe they're not directed; they're just choosing to play that way.
Yeah. Before we go to break, I want to make a coaching point, and it's kind of, I guess, surprising for me. The Nuggets are 4-3. Okay, this isn't like they're not 2-5. Like the Clippers are in real trouble. They are a long way from where they need to be. There are other teams that are struggling way more with expectations, but I was pretty consistent with the notion that this is the season for Michael Malone. Like, you've got everything. And I've also stressed that, like, they got to get off to a good start. Now, he's had the minutes restriction on Jamal. MPJ's missed a game. Jamal's missed a game. Bones has missed a game. All of these things do matter. Like, they do matter. That's also part and parcel of the regular season, and he knows that. My thing is, you got to see you have to see the entire thing, and then I think you can make a decision. I think there are things that last year, okay, starters aren't getting grounded to the ground. A lot of their losses have been about the spot that they were in from a schedule standpoint, and not, I thought, from a tactical decision making. I don't even necessarily look at that game last night. Even with the all bench unit run, I don't necessarily go like Malone cost them that game, period, end dot. It's like Malone played his part. Like, Malone was part of it. I thought MPJ's again, I had a lot of criticism with the starting unit. Won their minutes. Like, I just don't know. Like, you're absolutely right. You take out that section and they win that game. And the bench has been better in general than it was last year. So I think my big thing is, it's good, I think, to have criticism when the coaching staff deserves it. And I think they deserved it after this game. I think that, like, I've mentioned the scheme stuff that I'm concerned about. And I think it's okay to be frustrated as a fan with the coaching staff for what they view as, honestly, one of the bigger things is just they don't ever come out with an edge.
Oh man, this is a great point. This is one of the things about, like, when we have like couch takes where, like, we think this. This is one I feel pretty confident in with the Nuggets. They don't have the edge. They don't have the toughness and the physicality. And I don't know where they're going to get it. It's one of those ones where some of these things they're going to solve. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, they're figured out through the course of the year. But that one, they're a little deficient.
A little bit. Let's go to the break. We'll talk about Jamal a little bit. I want to talk more about the physicality stuff. We'll do that when we come back on the other side on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. I want to get to a couple of quick comments in the comment section here. Stefan says, "Can Boogie solve the Nuggets bench problems?" No, stop it. He's not in the league for a reason. Stop it. Like, we got to stop this. Stop, please. I'm begging you. Like, there's a reason. It's not like the Nuggets were like, he wasn't good. Like, they know about how, like, the good stuff last year. You try and remember what it was like at the end in that playoff run. Like, really try and remember what it was like when he was picking up texts. Like, really try and remember.
Oh, I don't think that was why. I mean, I don't think that's like the concerning thing that he gets technicals or whatever. I mean, he does get a lot of them, but they were better. It's clearly
tied. It's tied.
Maybe it's tied. I mean, but it's clear if he just got technical fouls, they'd be like, he's Rasheed Wallace, man. He gets techs. It's Draymond Green. He gets techs, but it's worth it.
Yep. All right, so I want to talk about the toughness thing. So, because you talked about this on DMVR last night, and you haven't listened, go listen to the DMVR postgame show. Always a great show. The book on them in 2020 was that, right? Was that they were soft. Was like the Clippers punked them on that national TV game, and it was like, this team's never going to be able to put it together. And then the run happened in the bubble, which I'd like, it needs to be contextualized. It wasn't a normal environment. You didn't have to go on the road and do this. But like, Markieff Morris tried to bully them, and Paul Millsap told him to shut up, and some other words. And like, then they just like, they really like, they out physicaled that team. Like, they were the tougher team, and they were mentally really tough. Like, that was their defining trait, I thought, coming out of that season. This roster is entirely different 2 years later. Like, they are an entirely different team 2 years later. Like playoff intensity, I think can be defined a lot of ways, right? I think the Celtics have a little bit of an edge, but I don't necessarily know that there's like Marcus Smart's physical, but he's not like a super. I don't feel like Marcus Smart's like a fighter Fowler type of dude, but they play at the edge with a lot of you feel them defensively, I guess. Like, what are the type of teams that you think? Because honestly, one of the things is I think it was really glaring after last night because that's pretty much all the Lakers are. Is they're just all physicality. It's why it was a tough matchup, I thought, for Jamal defensively, even though he's really good offensively, which we'll talk about in a second. Like, that's just a really super physical team because that's all they have, right? But like, what are the contenders you think that have, besides Milwaukee, which I think is an obvious one, what are the contenders that you think that have that kind of like really super like physical edge?
Boston.
Okay.
I mean, they're one of them. I mean, you get it from different guys. Like, I don't know, Miami, of course, and it traditionally has had this. They've been a contender. Even Milwaukee has it. It's not necessarily the toughness as in the bravado toughness, we're elbowing guys. It's just the physicality of like, does this team hurt to play against? Physically, does it hurt? And Denver has the finesse label, but I think that they also are just a bit of a finesse team in that it's not physically taxing to go up against them in a way it should be. And who are the guys that are going to make you feel them every single night? Jokic is one of those guys traditionally. I don't think he is right now, though. Like, I don't think Anthony Davis last night or this morning wakes up with bruises.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God, that was a load. I don't think he feels that way right now. But you also just need, like, Aaron Gordon is a guy who should be this, where it's like, man, going against AG is just a pain. He always, he's just constantly pushing and leaning on you and this or that. Bruce Brown, I think, is the one guy that you could say maybe brings a little bit of this, but he's a smaller guy. Like, he's not going to have all of it. So Denver just needs, I think, that physicality, that rough and tumble to him, a couple of guys that do that. And I don't know where they're going to get it from.
Somebody mentions Aaron Gordon needing to be that guy. Zariki says, I blame AG. He needs to wild up, which I think is an interesting way of putting it. I will agree that I think I've thought since game one that AG is settling into the season. I think this is one of the consequences of having a veteran team is that a lot of guys really do put it on cruise control until January, right? Now, I'm not going to be
Green's like guy number one who's just in cruise control, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, like, really got to stress how bad Jeff was last night. Like, absolutely nightmarishly terrible. So at the same time, I'm not going to be inconsistent here. I said, like, they need to get off to a good start. They do. Like, they need to rack up wins between now and December. I kind of think they still will. Like, I'm not, if they were 2-5, I would feel a lot differently than 4-3.
Right.
Right. And here's what's kind of been interesting if you look at it. Okay. They lose the home opener to a better than expected Utah team. They beat the Warriors, who are struggling right now. But that's like a big win. They pretty much cruise versus the Thunder. Like, it wasn't an impressive performance, but they had that game handled. They lose to Portland, who's red hot right now. Like, Portland's out of the gates, storming, like trying to prove something. I think this is part of it is you're either young or you're a team that fell off and you're trying to prove something. And that, I think, adds a lot to where you're at early in the season. I actually looked this up, and like the Thunder in the first 20 games of the season, the last 3 seasons, are they're a 30-win pace team, which are just like 30 wins is not good. No, but it's not bottom 20. It's not 22, right? Like, the Thunder are competitive, and they're against the spread. They're like 63%. Young.
They're tough. You have to play well to beat them.
Yeah. And so, like, this is part of it. Is just like, and if you're the Nuggets, like, if you're a vet, let's take it out of the context of the team. Let's put it on the players themselves. You know how long these seasons are. You know how far away from the playoffs are. You know your body and how it responds to things. Like, honestly, this is part of it. You need to win games without trying too hard between October and December. Yeah. Like, that's the goal, is to win games without trying hard.
Right.
Which is not easy.
Yeah. I mean, I do think some of this is like, you look at a team like Dallas, it's so simple for them, their identity, because they're kind of like not a very talented team. you just rely on Luka so much, and then when he's not on the court, you have this style play, and you go to it, and the ceiling becomes lowered. But it's easier to kind of know, okay, this is who we are. Last year, even with Jokic, I think there was a lot of this where it was Jokic didn't have to look around and say, okay, we have a lot of guys that sees into it. It's like, okay, I got to carry us from night number one. I think right now there's a lot of, we're a process, we're going to figure this out. And everyone, but especially Jokic, is just sort of in feel it out mode, not necessarily in dominate and take over mode. Is that the right approach? I don't think so. But again, I've never gone through an 82-game season. I'm just sitting on my couch watching it. So maybe there's a little bit more perspective from a guy like him who's like, yeah, I know I could win us some games right now, but the process is more important. I don't know. We'll find out.
Zrikic says, there's a question for Adam. Describe Nuggets style and identity. I can't this season.
Well, here's part of what's so funny, and this was on the rewatch last night. One of the things that stood out, the Jokic Murray two-man game actually had a lot of really good stuff last night. Murray obviously got going, so that's part of it. But even early on, there was a lot of just those two guys playing back and forth and getting really good looks. Some of these Jokic just missed, like he missed some weird ones at the rim last night. Murray even missed a couple of his floaters, but some of this actually led to good process. Murray pick and roll, dish to Jokic, kick to the corner for three. There was some good things happening. So to me, I think the question is revealing something, because you're right. The Nuggets have been ball is popping, play through Jokic down in the post more, guys spacing the court. There's been less of that. And I do wonder if part of this with Jokic is he's not quite sure where the scales need to go yet. Does it need to go to more Murray Jokic two-man game? Less? How do I get it over here? Does he need to be more aggressive, this or that? I think he's still trying to figure those things out. So the question implies that the Nuggets don't have an identity. I think that they have the same identities that they've had over the last several years, just trying to figure out where the scales go on that. For me, ramp up the Jokic part. That would be my solution, but maybe Jokic doesn't want to go there right now.
So Murray, Brown, Jokic have a plus net rating. They shot 47% from the field and 36% from three in about 10 minutes per game. I think there's probably something to that. I think one of the things that's going to be a key for them that I hadn't really thought about is their model in previous seasons really was, when Murray was healthy, was, okay, we have a 5-man Jokic ball approach, and we have Jokic Murray 2-man game. Finding the connection between those two mechanisms and how to use those two to really like run pick and roll, then get the ball popping, get everybody involved, up the energy, up the intensity, create high percentage looks. Like there was some of that. I'll say this, like I thought the starters got really good looks in that in the third, and
they had a run in the third. They actually were a huge positive in the third.
Yeah. And like KCP like missed some shots that I think like he'll knock down. But these are kind of things and again, I don't mean to do this, but because I think Porter's been overall good and gaining steam game by game. I think he's been getting better. I think it's hard for MPJ to be the third wheel in a Jokic Murray. Like he's not a connector, right? So it's like, how do you like that balance? I think is inherently tough. It still remains a little bit tough, I think.
But I do think that the Michael Porter stagger that they've aimed to do lately works. Michael Porter's twice now been in foul trouble that I think has disguised this a little bit. The one thing I'll say is I think that where the healthy spot you're going to land in, rather than hoping Murray just is a better ball-is popping player, because he just hasn't been in his career. The game slows down when he's on the court. There's a lot more just rescreen action between him and Jokic, but it's effective, so it's hard to be too upset. I do think the stagger is right, and I think where Jokic is going to end up landing is when Murray's on the court with him. That's going to be your option. But when it's not, he needs to turn the dial up and be more aggressive. When Murray comes off the court, which is another great option, especially when Porter's on the court, Jokic can turn the dial up on being more aggressive and playing like he did last year. And I think Michael Porter even will benefit from Jokic being more aggressive in those ways. So to me, it's probably where we're going to arrive, is that Jokic is going to be the one that has to determine how the team plays when he is on the court. They're going to have two styles. The one thing I'll say is Michael Porter, it's going to be one of my big notes when I do a notebook pod, but the Nuggets, Michael Porter is an elite transition player. He kills you in transition. He's good at finishing at the rim. He's good at making threes. He bends the defense. He stretches the court. When he's on the court, the Nuggets are really good in transition. And Right now, the Nuggets just play way too slow too often when he's there. You also have Casey. You have good transition options, and I think Denver needs to take advantage of that. But they're very comfortable, especially when Murray's on the court, playing in the half court. You got to find the right balance there.
They were really bad in transition last night.
Well, defensively they were.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Just sorry, I know you're talking about.
I was speaking just to offense.
Yeah. No, sorry, this is a separate point. It's like, oh, and also, they were really bad in transition defensively last night. Like, and I'm sorry, like that one gets to that. They were not doing what it's not like I will promise you, I will guarantee you that the scouting report was like, you got to get back in transition. That's what this team does.
That's all they can. That's the Lakers have such a hard time scoring in the half court. They're going to score in transition. And by the way, this is one where Jokic is also shining in the worst way. Like he stands out as one of the bad transition guys.
Yeah, he does. He got caught like. There was just a couple where guys just got downhill on him. He was like trotting back and then turned and was like, "Oh no, he's already at the rim."
Yep, like one of those ones where he didn't even see it because he's kind of just jogging back, and by the time he turns around, there's a guy that he should have picked up or noticed earlier, and he's like, "Oh crap!" So
yeah,
again, like some of the stuff is, it's weird to say because it's so early. I don't know how to contextualize it.
Matt, I know. Yeah, I can tell you're struggling. Like I can tell, like you're itching to be like you're like these things are really annoying and fixable, and like And
do championship teams do these? Like I know, like the Warriors. Okay, they've won. They've been over this mountain. But the teams that are climbing, are the Suns and the Celtics and the teams that are like contending, but know that they're good enough to be at that top? Are they doing these things? I know Phoenix wasn't last year, but they didn't win last year, so I don't know where to put it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing, right? It's like the Suns I think are a good example of this. The Suns can win however many games they won. Everybody's gonna be like, yeah, but right, like. But at the same time, see, for me, and we gotta get out of here in a minute, but for me, their winning games is so much more about rest and health. Like maybe, yeah. It's for me, it's look, Portland I think is playing great right now, but like the Lakers game is an example of. And it's fine. I think as long as you get to Christmas, like maybe you just start off slow and then you hit your stride in November and you rattle off. Because I will say one thing you said on the DMVR show, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a little concerned about the road trip coming up. Is that right? Is that accurate?
Well, it's just tough, man. Like I think the road home thing, it's really about, do you get to be in one place? And the Nuggets, this schedule, I'm telling you, the schedule makers really made it tough on Denver in a lot of ways. But this one where they're just even though they have home games, like the road trips are only 4 games at a time, their home returns are 1 game, which basically makes it just another stop on a road trip. Like, will they unpack their bags for all these 1-game home returns? I don't know if they will. They might just keep the suitcase rolling. You sleep in your house for 2 nights, and then you're on the road again. So it's just a tough stretch in terms of travel. And then we know road games are just harder than home games. So even though the competition is Indiana, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, teams that you don't think are necessarily that good, Denver will be traveling every other day for the next 30 days. They'll be at an airport every other day.
I have a blistering hot take.
Let's hear it.
Best thing in the world for them.
To go on the road thing and like you're all together? Is that why?
Yes. Because I genuinely think that Malone's good at those type of things. I think he's good at fostering camaraderie. I think that Jokic is good in those environments because I don't think he disconnects. I think like that's who he's with, right? Like he's away from the rest of the and honestly, like you don't ever want to be away from your family. That's always hard, but that's part of it. And I think that there's a mentality. I do think that certain teams that have this problem, like when you're winning on the road, it causes really good things to form. You get a win. Yeah. But
the only reason I'll disagree with you, Matt, because I think your point's right. If usually this is like the San Antonio circus road trip, right? And it's 2 weeks. It's a long time. It's 2 weeks and you're on the road. This is 30 days. There's a level between like this is hard and this is exhausting. And I just think 30 days is going to be exhausting. So if it was a 5-6 game road trip, yep, here we go. You're going through the pressure cooker. Let's do it. But this is essentially a 16 game road trip, even though they're at home. Again, it's just a home stop. Let me say this, though. This is a really good point by Milian here. Denver always struggles most of the seasons. They never had winning streaks of more than 6 games in Jokic era. I think it's actually 7 or 8. But the point remains. Like, It just randomly teams go on 10-game winning streaks over the course of 7 or 8 seasons. You do it. And Denver never does. And I do wonder what it is about them that they never get that little win streak going that's like 10, 11 games or even multiple 7-win games. That's how you get up to that 55-plus season is you just have 1 or 2 7-game winning streaks. And Denver rarely ever does.
Do you have any theories on why that is?
No, I mean, no. I think the team kind of goes as your best player, and Jokic isn't always in killer mode, so that'd probably be part of it. But again, a lot of people in the chat, I think, are right in saying Jokic knows that it's about being healthy at the end of the season, and that is true. Sometimes you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want good habits, but maybe you do have to pick one or the other. Unless you're LeBron James, who's like for 17 seasons somehow is able to just dominate every night and be healthy for the playoffs.
This is where I've gotten to with the NBA. This is the biggest reason why I want them to reduce the schedule. Is if the players are just like we cannot give great effort every night because of the schedule, and I'd rather they just change, but they're not going to. Like, you have a guaranteed $300 million. What are you gonna do? Okay, let's change the schedule. Like, whatever it takes to get to a place where the players feel like no, like we can go, like I can go hard every night. That's what I want. That's what I want. Is at least 9 out of 10 times I want it to be like we can go hard. Like I can do this. My body can handle going hard every single night. That's the ideal for the NBA. All right. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Nuggets. Sorry to do it on Optimism Monday after a Lakers loss, but it's one in a long season. We'll see how they go. It's a bad loss. Maybe there'll be more. Maybe there'll be less. We'll see how that goes.
Real quick, before you sign off, Nuggets now have 2 practice days in a row, tomorrow and Wednesday, before they start this road trip. Like, how good of a thing is that for Denver to be 2 weeks into the season and get 2 practices in a row? It's rare.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I've ever covered that dynamic. So it's an interesting question. Maybe it's something we should definitely ask at practice this week. Okay. All right, that will wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope you have yourselves a great week. Make sure to like, review, subscribe, give us those 5-star reviews, and make sure to check out all of Adam's stuff over at DNVR. We'll see you guys again next time.